Well, farm and ranching businesses, we all know, they operate on thin margins, and that's why many producers make financial plans to avoid unnecessary loss of funds. We want to take a look now at a few unique strategies to help protect your bottom line. The man to help us with that, Mr. Roger McEowen. Roger, always a pleasure. Thanks for being here. We start with an aspect of staying protected from economic loss, really to make sure that farm assets are protected. So what are some of the key elements to keep that in mind?
Well, good to be with you, Suzanne. And this is a big deal for farmers and ranchers, or at least it should be, because as you mentioned, the margins are tight. We want to avoid leakage in areas where we don't need to have leakage. And this is really impacting the bottom line. I think one area here is to have a really good comprehensive farm liability policy. So if you have a casualty event or a theft that occurs, make sure you take pictures. If it is a theft, you think, call the sheriff if necessary, get good records, and then understand your policy. And that's going to have to be done up front. So stay in good contact with your agent on this. Ask questions when you are shopping for a policy. Understand how that policy works. Are you going to get paid for replacement value? Are you going to get actual cash value? Is there a limit on the payout? I think those are the big things on insurance that you need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. Definitely understanding what kind of loss and what kind of protection you're looking at. Another way to increase your farmer's profitability, create a budget. Any advice on how to best monitor and manage that process?
Yeah, I mentioned this one to people, and it's kind of, okay, begrudgingly accepted. But a budget forces you to put everything down on paper and view your farm as a complete business with many moving parts. You don't operate a business if you don't have a budget. At least you're not going to operate it successfully if you don't have a budget. Well, think of your farm that way too. And it allows you to see how each part affects the other part. So change one of the parts, and you'll see the impact on the other parts of your overall farming operation. And then once it's created, stick with it, stick to it. And compare your budget, I would suggest, to farming industry standard farming budgets. And often your land grant university in your state and those ag colleges will have those, and then you can learn a lot by comparing your operation to how state averages are doing.
Yeah, that is so important to write it down. I know so many people probably listening going, I don't stick with that. I try to do it the first of the year. Technology, of course, we know, evolving as far as agriculture is concerned. How should farmers go about protecting the farm with tech and from technology?
Well, technology can be very useful for farming operations. We can tailor applications of chemicals to crops. We can use it in the livestock side. But remember, there are also those groups out there that don't like particularly livestock operations. And so make sure you have good cameras around and you have good employment agreements if you have employees so that you don't get sabotaged, for example, from somebody that wants to put you out of business. And another issue right now that is a hot issue is this whole ownership of technology issue, this right to repair. When I buy a machine, what do I actually own? And what does the manufacturer, the dealer, think that I own, and what do they think that they own? That's in the courts right now as of just, as a matter of fact, yesterday. So how does the manufacturer view that? Understand the use of technology and the ownership of it.
Well, another hot topic and something that you discuss here often at RFD-TV, estate planning. Big mistakes producers need to avoid here.
Yeah, I'd say number one big mistake on that is just simply not doing anything. And if you don't do anything, your state has an estate plan for you that you may not like. And that's a big issue. And another big issue is proper titling of the real estate, understanding the difference between joint tenancy and tenancy in common. And then I'd say a third one would be not planning for long-term care expenses. If you haven't planned for that and that is in need, you can spend roughly $100,000 a year if you need full-time long-term care, and that can really impact an estate plan. And always ask yourself the question, and it's not an answerable question, but think about how much sand is in the top of my hourglass. That sand is slowly slipping out, and you need to have a plan in place.
Always great information, Roger. Thank you so much for being here. Roger McEowen with the Washburn School of Law. Do appreciate all the information.